Welcome to another edition of the Giants Huddle podcast, brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the Giants. I am John Schmeelk. Well, this is going to be the first of what I hope is many interviews with college coaches that coach the Giants draft picks. We like to do this every year. Of course, we're in the Hackensack Meridian Health podcast studio. Keep getting better. So we're going to lead off with Giants seventh round pick, tight end Thomas Fidone, who was in Nebraska and was coached by tight ends coach and also offensive coordinator Marcus Satterfield. So we're going to talk to him about him as a guy, him as a player, and everything else about the Thomas Fidone II experience at the University of Nebraska. And now we welcome in the tight ends coach for the University of Nebraska, Marcus Satterfield. Marcus, how are you?
I'm doing good.
Marcus, it's great to talk to you, man. Thank you so much for being with us. You coached Thomas Fidone for a couple years when you arrived with Matt Rule. And when you got there, he was still rehabbing that second knee injury, right? So what did you learn about him when you got there and you're still trying to work back from those two consecutive, really debilitating knee injuries?
Just the traits of being so competitive. I mean, you saw the toughness, mental toughness, and just the competitiveness to get back to full strength that he was working through. Was very, it was one of the first things that I noticed about Thomas when we first got here.
Absolutely. And then obviously, you're running the offense, you're trying to work him in. How long did it take for you, Marcus, to figure out how he fits in how you want to run your offense at Nebraska?
Well, we were a pro style offense, so tight ends are crucial. And when you meet Thomas, you don't really realize how big he is. He's a large human being. He can, he functions well in the run game, and he can run. He's got speed, so he can operate in space and run routes. So I mean, he was a guy that we could just plug in at the Y position and do everything in the run game and in the pass. So he's he's got unbelievable speed, straight ahead speed, straight line speed for the vertical passing game. So for what we wanted to do, he fit right in from day one.
Yeah, I was down at the Senior Bowl, and the first thing I noticed right away just watching him was his movement skills. And I knew he was coming off to an injury, so I'm like, I know it was 2 years ago, but I'm like, all right, how athletic he's going to be. And his speed in person matches his speed on tape. Then you watch his athleticism testing at the combine. Those checked out too. I know he was a late pick, and I don't think fans realize what a good athlete he is.
Yeah, super athlete. And again, usually, guys of that stature, you don't think they can, have the short area quickness, change of direction. When you watch him run routes, it's like a thoroughbred horse. Like you feel him running, you feel him getting in and out of his breaks. He's got 34 inch
Yeah.
arms. Like he plays with length. So he's got an advantage over those linebackers and safeties that are going to, start to try to guard him in coverage. So he's, we're going to miss him around here.
Now, did you like to use him as a Y or more as an F move tight end, or did it really depend on the situation and the time of game and down and distance and stuff
Yeah,
like
it
that?
depended on just what we were trying to accomplish in the run or the pass game. He could play the Y, he could play the F, he could split out, play on the perimeter. He could do all three facets of the tight end position.
So when you use him as a Y and you started to develop him, and when you guys arrived, was it more work to develop him as a wide receiver? Because I know he played wide receiver in high school. Is that where you had to do most of the development, or was it trying to get him to do some of the Y stuff, run blocking and things like that to adjust to your pro style?
The route running was never an issue. The ball skills were never an issue. It was just putting your face in the block. Just the run game aspect of it in the line of scrimmage with all those human beings in the box. I think was the thing that we had to develop the most. And I think just over 2 years, he's from where we got here to where he is now is night and day.
So talk about his development as a blocker, because I don't have to tell you, a lot of that is the want, right? And the willingness to get in there and do it. So was that there right away when you tried to coach that into Thomas?
Yeah, the one thing that it's hard to teach tight ends is if they don't like contact. They're not going to put their face in the block. It's always going to be a struggle for them to, generate ground-based power, move people off their spot. Thomas has the want to and the toughness. So that, it's easy to teach guys that are willing to put their face in the block and try to, have to really, strain to move defenders off their spots, especially in the Big Ten. The guys that we're blocking are some pretty big dudes, but just from day one, just his willingness to do whatever we asked was, apparent he was going to have success.
And then what were some of the areas, coach, where you really saw an improvement in his technique when it comes to blocking over the course of your time with him there?
I think just, being the Y on the line of scrimmage, blocking a 6'5", 245, 260-pound defensive end in the Big Ten and being able to, have good contact balance and, hand control, strike ability, all those things that you're looking for at the next level at the NFL. I think that, this past season, you can turn on the tape and watch him do that.
Huddle up, get in here. If you're lined up here, you gotta go over the middle with it to score.
Right. How do we make that happen?
I don't know.
But Citizens does.
Make sense of your money with Citizens, official bank of Eli Manning.
All right, let's talk about him as a receiver now. Should Giant fans see him more as a linear seam runner type, or is he more of all right, I'm going to get to the top of the route, I'm going to shake the tight end with my side-to-side quickness, or is he a guy that can do both?
He can do everything, but I think his super trait is just the vertical passing game. Like his straight line speed is really, really, really good. And I think just his ability to play with length and catch the ball, one-on-one on linebackers and safeties that are a little bit shorter, short levered than he is. I think he can use his length and his speed to take advantage of some of those matchups.
And I feel like watching tight ends at the pro level, a lot of it is feeling zones, right? You're trying to find those little soft spots against these zone defense. You guys obviously in college, you're going to face a lot of cover 4 stuff, a lot of 2 safeties high. How is his feel going against zone coverage, finding those gaps, using his leverage the right way to kind of give those quarterbacks those openings in the short to intermediate areas?
The way that we teach it in that room, the position room, we teach them like quarterbacks. I mean, like you said, you have to understand coverages and how to attack it. So I think, he has a great feel for different types of coverages, whether it be zone, whether it be man, single high, shell coverage. He understands the attack points and where he needs to be based on progressions and timing and, the spacing of the play. I call it time and spacing. I think, he has very good time and spacing skills of where he needs to be and awareness of where he needs to be on each play.
Now, you were with Coach Rule and when he was at the Panthers, and you mentioned you run an NFL offense. So how do you think he's going to fit in now when he gets to the NFL?
The good thing is we huddle and we have 13, 14 word play calls, which I'm not saying that's good. But, he's been in a huddle, broke a huddle, ran a play, got the crap knocked out of him, been out of breath, got back in a huddle and had to hear a 12 play call, break the huddle, have a different snap count, maybe alert it, maybe can it, maybe reload it. So all the things that you're going to be asked to do at the next level is not going to be foreign to him. He's done that for the last 2 years.
I think that, and maybe you already answered most of this question in your previous response. So what parts, aside from the huddling part of it, from your offense at Nebraska being a pro style thing, do you think will really translate well and help him be prepared for the NFL?
I think just the way that you're utilizing, I mean, you've got to, run block, pass block, run routes, run the football, have, rushing skills. I think just the things we ask him to do in pass protection that he's going to be asked to do at the next level is going to pay huge dividends for him. It's not going to be foreign. Some of these guys just play receiver that get drafted as a tight end. He's been in line and had to pass protect and run block these defensive ends. The chips you see, you can utilize to help the tackles and pass protection. He did that all last year. So I think he's well versed in, what he's going to be asked to do at the next level.
Now, you've talked about how you utilize him as a receiver and a blocker. If he was in a more spread out system where you're throwing it a million times a game, I imagine you got to think his production would just be a little bit higher, right? And just maybe because of the way you guys run the offense, which, by the way, is not a bad thing. I think you got to run the football. You're doing the absolute right thing there. That maybe elsewhere his numbers would have been a little bit better given his athletic gifts.
Yeah, if he would have, I mean, the difference, no huddle spread offenses, he would have definitely been maybe more productive, but maybe he wouldn't have gotten drafted because you're not going to see the traits. Like the NFL guys are going to see him chip a defensive end, pass protect a defensive end, base block a defensive end, double team to the mic, run a basic cross, understand spacing concepts, run the vertical passing game. So he got to showcase every trait they're looking for at that level. Production, we had a true freshman quarterback last year. We had our first year, we had multiple quarterbacks and, we struggled with any type of passing game. And then last year with Dylan, we had a freshman quarterback. So I think just, those 2 years alone, if he played this year, he'd probably have, 15 more catches this year than he did last year. But I think that, all that'll in time will play out. And I think just the traits he developed here as the pro style offense is going to help him tremendously.
No, Marcus, you're exactly right. I mean, whenever I talk to coaches at the Giants or other teams, the first thing they say is, I have so much trouble figuring out how what this guy does in college is going to translate to the pro level because, with the hash marks and stuff, it's a very different game. But I think when they watch him at tape at Nebraska, it's pretty clear to see, all right, this is how this is going to work in the pros.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've already said it, a couple of times, but just this style of offense, I think really, it helps the way that we play football, the way that I know I'm not supposed to say this, but the way Iowa plays football, I think it helps the development of tight ends at the next level. They're not going in there and again, it's some of these guys have never been in a huddle. Like they don't have any idea. Like you start rumbling off these play calls and they can't function. And I think guys like Thomas that have been in these environments, these football environments, I think, have an easier transition, a faster transition to the next level.
If you want to know how to manage 2 minutes of crunch time football, I'm your man. But if you're wondering about a long-term financial plan, you should talk to Citizens. Hey, I can also talk lawn care.
I'd like to learn about a mowing routine.
Yes, I knew I could help.
Make sense of your money with Citizens.
All right, tell me about Thomas Fidone, the guy. What kind of person are the Giants getting with him in the locker room?
Well, the thing, you're going to hear he's got 2 ACLs. Yet since we were here, he never missed one practice. And, coach says all the time, your best ability is availability. And we had to pull him out of bowl practice this year. Like you've played enough, like you don't, we'll let the young guys practice a little bit, but he was there consistently every day. I think he's obsessed with being the best version of himself. I'd say if he had a fault, that would be it. Like he's just so obsessive with trying to be the best tight end in the country. It's almost like unhealthy at times. Like, you relax, take a breath, but he's a tireless worker. He's a great teammate in the locker room. Again, he understands how to do hard things. That's what we take a lot of pride here is just being able to do hard things continuously over time, which would be part of our process. So I think that, his best days are in the future. I can't wait to watch him develop. I think, he's an older guy, but he hadn't got to play a ton of football because of the 2 injuries. So I think he's only going to continue to get better and better, as the years go on.
The one thing I think coaches always wonder about, kids when they're going to draft them, do they love football, right? And I know he grew up in a family that was a huge Nebraska family. I think they grew up in Omaha, right? Even though he went to school in Council Bluffs in Iowa in high school. Did you always get that sense of just his absolute love for the game? I imagine given his work ethic that you're talking about, that is kind of a core part of his personality, that he just always wanted to be a football player.
Yeah, that's, the traits you look for when you're recruiting. Luckily, we walked into him being here. It's just, do they love football and are they competitive and are they tough? And he is. He's tough. He's hardworking. He's competitive. He loves football. And I think if you got guys like that, you have a chance to develop into something really good.
And I always find it interesting to ask guys like you who've been in the room with these guys how they learn. Is he more of a visual learner? Is he a guy that, takes a lot of notes? Does he have to see it on the field? How does he learn?
Very good note taker. That's the thing Coach Rule always stresses. One of my favorite Coach Ruleisms is every revolution started with a pen. So our guys know how to take notes. I think
I like that.
Yeah, it's good stuff. But I can draw plays on the board and he can pick it up and learn it, take a note, and then we'll go out and walk through it, and then he's ready to roll. But his football intelligence, I think, would be very good, is how I'd rate it.
So even though he's a late round pick, the way you're talking about him, Coach, and look, every player needs development, obviously, you're going from college to the NFL, but it seems like the learning curve for him, given his intelligence, his work ethic, and the type of offense he played in, it probably isn't going to be like what you might get from a raw prospect that you would get in a round 7 of an NFL draft.
Yeah, that would be the last thing I would worry about, me personally, with Thomas, is learning and picking up on whatever offense he goes into. Again, it's all going to be comfortable and normal for him.
Now, what kind of leader is he? Is he kind of a rah-rah lead with the voice, being a loud guy? Is he more of a lead by example guy? How does he lead in that way?
Yeah, he's more of a lead by example, just through his work ethic. And again, like I said, just his endurance and, showing up for every practice. I think just how hard he worked and competed, it was, much more of a lead by example than a rah-rah guy.
All right, and then final question. I always just like to ask, guys like you who've been in the meeting with these guys and been through wars with these guys over a course of a couple years. Any great anecdotes or stories or anything that you want to share about Thomas with Giant fans from a personal level that you would think help him connect with the player, or anything that makes him special?
Man, I don't know if I have anything really that funny in the last 2 years. Just his obsession with being the best. Like he wants to be the best tight end in the country, whether it be in college or the NFL. And I think that you're going to see that in just how he lives his life, works, practices, and represents the Giants.
Awesome stuff. Coach, I really appreciate the time, man. This was fantastic. Good luck next year. Send Coach Rule my regards. I was here when he was here with the Giants as an assistant O-line coach in 2012. I've been here a while. I wish you guys all the success. I hope you have a great year. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.
We say thank you very much to Marcus Satterfield, who joins us. He's the tight ends coach for the University of Nebraska. He was also their offensive coordinator. Really good stuff there about Thomas. Learned a lot about him, what a good kid he is, and really how quickly he might be able to adjust to the pro game. Thank you for joining us in the Hackensack Meridian Health Podcast Studio. Keep getting better. That's all the time we have for this edition of the Giants Huddle Podcast, brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the Giants. For Coach Satterfield, I am John Schmeelk. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next time.